Close your eyes and imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, but something is wrong, terribly wrong. The air smells different, like smoke, animal dung, and something you can't quite place. Your bed isn't a bed anymore. It's a woven reed mat on a mud brick floor. Your phone is gone. Your clothes are gone. Everything you know is gone. You step outside into blinding sunlight. The heat hits you like a physical force. 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. There is no air conditioning, no shade, just the merciless Egyptian sun beating down on the desert. In the distance, you see it, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. But it's not the weathered monument you know from photos. It's gleaming white, covered in polished limestone that reflects the sun like a mirror. It's brand new. You've been transported back 4,500 years to ancient Egypt, circa 2500 BC, during the height of the Old Kingdom. You have no modern technology, no medicine, no knowledge of the language, no social status, no connections, no immunities to ancient diseases. The question isn't whether you'll struggle, the question is, how long will you survive? Most historians and anthropologists agree on one thing. If a modern person was suddenly transported to ancient Egypt with no preparation, no local knowledge, and no social support system, they would be dead within 30 days. Not might be dead, would be dead. Ancient Egypt wasn't the romantic civilization you see in Hollywood movies, with wise pharaohs, mystical priests, and beautiful temples bathed in golden light. That world existed, but only for the tiniest fraction of the population. For everyone else? For the 99% who built the pyramids, worked the fields, and died young. Ancient Egypt was a brutal, unforgiving hellscape where death lurked around every corner. In the water you drank, the food you ate, the animals that surrounded you, and the diseases that ravaged your body. This is why you wouldn't survive in ancient Egypt. Day 1, the medical nightmare begins. Let's start with the most immediate threat, your body. Within hours of arriving in ancient Egypt, you would begin experiencing symptoms. Not because you're doing anything wrong, simply because you exist in this environment. Your modern immune system, trained by a lifetime of vaccinations, antibiotics, and relatively sterile environments, is completely unprepared for the microbial warfare of the ancient world. The water is the first problem. In ancient Egypt, there are exactly 2 sources of water: the Nile River and wells connected to groundwater that ultimately comes from the Nile. That's it. No filtration, no chlorination, no purification of any kind. The Nile isn't just a river, it's a biological weapon. The same river that Egyptians use for drinking water is used for bathing, washing clothes, disposing of human waste, watering livestock, and dumping refuse. Hippos defecate in it. Crocodiles hunt in it. Decaying organic matter floats downstream from Upper Egypt, and the Egyptians drink directly from it. Modern analysis of ancient Egyptian mummies has revealed something horrifying. Nearly 100% of the population was infected with waterborne parasites. Not some, not most, virtually everyone. The most common was schistosomiasis, also called bilharzia. This parasitic flatworm enters your body when you wade into the Nile or drink its water. The larvae burrow through your skin. You don't even need to drink the water, just touch it, and migrate to your liver and intestines. Within weeks, you develop fever, chills, muscle aches. Your liver begins to swell. You experience bloody urine and feces. Chronic infection leads to bladder cancer, liver damage, kidney failure. There is no treatment in ancient Egypt. You simply live with it until it kills you, which for many Egyptians, it eventually does. But schistosomiasis isn't the only parasite waiting for you. Guinea worm, a 3-foot-long parasite that grows inside your body and eventually erupts through your skin in an excruciating process that takes weeks. Tapeworms, sometimes growing to 30 feet long inside your intestines, stealing the nutrients from every meal you eat. Liver flukes, intestinal worms, blood parasites. Mummy studies show that the average Egyptian had multiple parasitic infections simultaneously. Their bodies were ecosystems of organisms, slowly consuming them from the inside. And you? With your modern immune system that's never encountered these parasites, you'd be infected within the first week, probably the first day. Now let's talk about malaria. Ancient Egypt was malaria endemic. The disease killed thousands annually, especially children. The Anopheles mosquito that carries malaria thrived in the marshes and irrigation canals of the Nile Delta. Genetic studies of ancient Egyptian mummies have confirmed that malaria was widespread. King Tutankhamun himself died partially due to complications from malaria infection. Without modern anti-malarial drugs like chloroquine, malaria has a mortality rate of up to 20% for severe cases. Even if you survive, you're debilitated for weeks. Fever, chills, vomiting, organ failure. And here's the kicker. You're going to get bitten by mosquitoes. There's no insect repellent, no mosquito nets, no screened windows. You sleep on a mat on the floor of a mud brick house with open windows for ventilation. The mosquitoes come for you every single night. Then there are the infections. Any cut, scrape, or wound in ancient Egypt is potentially lethal. There are no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no understanding of germ theory. Egyptians treat wounds with honey, which actually has some antimicrobial properties, animal dung, which absolutely does not, and various plant poultices of questionable effectiveness. A simple infected cut can lead to sepsis and death within days. Studies of ancient Egyptian remains show that bone infections, abscesses, and gangrenous limbs were common. Many skeletons show evidence of amputations, cutting off infected limbs to prevent the infection from spreading. This was done without anesthesia, using bronze or copper saws. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine having your legs sawed off while you're fully conscious, held down by several men, screaming, with nothing for the pain except perhaps some beer or wine to dull your senses. That was state-of-the-art medicine. Speaking of teeth, your mouth is about to become a source of constant agony. Ancient Egyptians suffered from terrible dental problems. Why? Because their bread, the staple of their diet, was full of sand. Grain was ground using stone mills. Tiny particles of stone ended up in the flour. Wind constantly blew desert sand into everything. The result? Every piece of bread contained abrasive particles that slowly ground down tooth enamel. By age 30, most Egyptians had severely worn teeth, exposed pulp, abscesses, and constant pain. Dental abscesses could lead to infections that spread to the jaw, the skull, and eventually cause death by septicemia. There were no dentists, no fillings, no root canals, just pain until your teeth rotted away or you died from infection. And we haven't even talked about the less visible killers. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, dysentery, typhoid fever, tetanus, smallpox, which some scholars believe existed in ancient Egypt, bubonic plague, present in ancient DNA samples. The average life expectancy in ancient Egypt was approximately 30 to 35 years. Not because Egyptians were genetically inferior, but because the disease burden was so overwhelming that most people didn't survive long enough to die of old age. Child mortality was around 50%. Half of all children born died before age 5. You, with your soft, modern immune system, would face this biological gauntlet with zero preparation. Give yourself 1 week before serious illness sets in. 2 weeks maximum. Day 3, the food and water crisis. Let's assume you've somehow avoided immediate infection. You're thirsty, you're hungry. You need to eat and drink to survive. This is where things get complicated. First, you need to understand something about ancient Egyptian society. There is no currency as you know it, no coins, no paper money. The monetary system is based on barter and rations distributed by the state or temple. You, a random person who just appeared with no identity, no family, no patron, and no recognized place in society, have absolutely no claim to food. The grain stores belong to the Pharaoh. The livestock belongs to wealthy estate owners. The fish in the Nile can be caught, but you need equipment, nets, hooks, boats, which you don't have. In modern terms, you're homeless and unemployed in a society with no social safety net whatsoever. Your only option is to offer your labor in exchange for food. But what labor can you offer? You don't speak the language. You don't know how to plant or harvest Egyptian crops. You've probably never used a hand plow or a sickle. You don't know how to make mud bricks, weave papyrus, work bronze, or do any of the skilled trades that Egyptians spend years learning. The only job available to you is the one job that's always available: unskilled manual labor on construction projects. Welcome to the pyramid building crew. Here's how it works. You join a labor gang, probably as part of the corvée system, a form of taxation where citizens owe the pharaoh a certain amount of labor time each year. In exchange for backbreaking work, you receive rations, bread, beer, onions, and occasionally some fish or meat. The bread is coarse, made from emmer wheat or barley, and as we discussed, full of sand that destroys your teeth. The beer is thick, nutritious, and actually safer than water because the brewing process involves boiling, which kills some pathogens. But it's not like modern beer. It's more like liquid bread, thick and filling, but low in alcohol. Onions and garlic are staples. Protein comes primarily from fish, with meat being a rare luxury reserved for festivals or the wealthy. This diet is nutritionally marginal. It provides enough calories for survival, barely, but is deficient in many vitamins and nutrients. Scurvy from vitamin C deficiency, anemia from lack of iron, vitamin D deficiency despite the abundant sunshine, because the Egyptian diet lacks sufficient dietary vitamin D sources. Now let's talk about your job: moving stones. The pyramids were built using millions of limestone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons. These blocks were quarried, transported, and lifted into place using human labor, wooden sledges, ropes, and ramps. You would be part of a team of men, pulling these blocks on sledges across the desert, under the brutal Egyptian sun, in temperatures exceeding 110 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not a metaphor. This is literally what you would do, all day, every day. The work is crushing. Studies of labor skeletons from pyramid construction sites show severe arthritis, spinal damage, crushed vertebrae, and bones broken from accidents. Men died regularly on these projects, crushed by falling stones, killed in structural collapses, or simply worked to death through exhaustion and heat stroke. And you, someone who probably spends most days sitting at a desk or looking at a phone, would be expected to perform this labor immediately, without training, without preparation. Your body would break down within days. Heat stroke is almost certain. When your core body temperature exceeds 104 degrees Fahrenheit, your organs begin to fail. Without immediate cooling and medical intervention, heat stroke kills quickly. Ancient Egyptians were acclimated to the heat through a lifetime of exposure. You are not. Dehydration is another killer. You'd need to drink several gallons of water per day to replace the fluids lost through sweat. But remember, that water comes from the Nile, loaded with parasites. So you have a choice: die of dehydration or drink the water and get infected. Actually, it's not a choice. You drink the water and you get infected. Let's say you somehow survive the first week of labor. Your hands are blistered and bleeding. Hello, infections. Your back is screaming in pain. You're sunburned so severely that your skin is peeling off in sheets. You're losing weight rapidly because the rations barely cover the calories you're burning. And then comes the real test: the social hierarchy. If you complain, if you slow down, if you fail to meet your work quota, you will be beaten. Overseers carried sticks and used them liberally. Beatings were not seen as abuse, they were standard motivation. Inscriptions from ancient Egypt describe workers being punished with beatings for laziness or failure to complete tasks. This was normal, expected, legal. You have no rights, no union, no recourse. You are a unit of labor, and if you fail to perform, you are discarded. Now imagine doing this for years, because that's what life was for the majority of ancient Egyptians. Endless, brutal labor in exchange for subsistence rations until your body gave out. You wouldn't make it past week 2. Week 1, the predators. Let's say you've somehow survived the disease, the labor, and the malnutrition. You've made it to the end of your first week. Now you need to worry about the things with teeth. Ancient Egypt was full of predators that saw humans as potential prey. These weren't zoo animals behind glass. They were wild, aggressive, and everywhere. Let's start with the most dangerous animal in Africa, the hippopotamus. Hippos killed more people in ancient Egypt than any other animal. They're not the cute, tubby creatures you see in cartoons. They're 3-ton tanks with jaws that can bite a crocodile in half. Hippos are territorial, aggressive, and fast. On land, they can run up to 30 miles per hour. In water, they're even more dangerous. Silent, submerged, and capable of attacking boats. Ancient Egyptian texts describe hippo attacks regularly. Fishermen, farmers working near the river, even people just fetching water were at risk. A hippo bite can crush a human skull. Their tusks can gore you through, and if they grab you, they drag you underwater and drown you. There was no defense against a hippo attack. If one decided you were a threat, you died. Simple as that. The Egyptians tried to hunt hippos to control the population, but it was incredibly dangerous. Tomb paintings show dozens of men with spears and ropes attempting to bring down a single hippo, and even then, the hippo often won. Now let's talk about crocodiles. The Nile crocodile is one of the largest and most aggressive crocodile species on Earth. Adults regularly reach 16 feet in length and weigh over 500 pounds. The largest recorded specimens exceeded 20 feet. These apex predators were everywhere in ancient Egypt, in the main river, in irrigation canals, in marshy areas. Any body of water could contain a crocodile. They're ambush predators. They wait silently underwater, then explode upward with incredible speed, grabbing prey with jaws that generate the strongest bite force of any animal on Earth, over 3,700 pounds per square inch. If a Nile crocodile grabs you, it performs what's called a death roll, spinning rapidly underwater to disorient you, tear flesh, and drown you. There is no escape. Human strength is irrelevant. Ancient Egyptians respected and feared crocodiles so much that they deified them, Sobek, the crocodile god. But that didn't stop crocodiles from eating people. Every time you went to the river to fetch water, wash clothes, fish, you risked a crocodile attack. Every single time. And here's the thing, you wouldn't see it coming. Crocodiles attack from below. One moment you're knee-deep in water, the next moment you're being dragged into the depths. Then there are the snakes. Egypt is home to several deadly species: Egyptian cobras, horned vipers, and saw-scaled vipers. The Egyptian cobra is one of the most venomous snakes in Africa. A single bite contains enough neurotoxin to kill a human in under an hour. The venom causes progressive paralysis, first your limbs, then your breathing muscles. You suffocate while fully conscious. Cleopatra allegedly used an Egyptian cobra for her suicide because the death, while terrifying, is relatively quick. But cobras were just one threat. Vipers were even more common. The horned viper hides in sand with only its eyes visible. Step on one, which was easy to do since Egyptians walked barefoot or in simple sandals, and you'd receive a bite that causes massive tissue damage, internal bleeding, and excruciating pain. Without antivenom, which didn't exist, viper bites had a significant mortality rate. Even if you survived, the necrosis could cost you a limb. Scorpions were another constant danger. Several species of deadly scorpions live in Egypt, including the deathstalker scorpion, whose venom is powerfully neurotoxic. Stings cause fever, convulsions, paralysis, and in severe cases, death. Scorpions love to hide in cool, dark places, exactly where an Egyptian would store grain, stack bricks, or lay down bedding. Shake out your sleeping mat before lying down? You better hope you saw the scorpion hiding in the folds. And let's not forget the insects. Beyond malaria-carrying mosquitoes, ancient Egypt had swarms of flies. So many that fly whisks were standard equipment for the wealthy. And tomb paintings show servants whose entire job was standing next to the pharaoh, waving flies away. These weren't just annoying. Flies spread disease, eye infections, trachoma, which causes blindness, intestinal diseases, wound infections. The Bible describes the plague of flies as one of the 10 plagues. This wasn't metaphorical. Egypt had so many flies that swarms of them could make life unbearable. Then there were the less obvious threats. Venomous fish and stingrays in the Nile. Lions in the desert regions. Yes, lions once lived in Egypt, though they were rare by the Old Kingdom period. Hyenas, jackals, and wild dogs that scavenged near human settlements. Even domesticated animals were dangerous. Ancient Egyptian cattle weren't docile dairy cows. They were semi-wild, aggressive animals. Getting gored by a bull was a legitimate occupational hazard for farmers. Basically, ancient Egypt was a death trap, full of animals that could kill you in dozens of creative ways. You wouldn't see most of them coming. You'd just be fetching water and suddenly a crocodile. Or walking to work and suddenly a viper. Or lying down to sleep and suddenly a scorpion. Death didn't announce itself. It just happened. Week 2, the social trap. Congratulations, you've survived 2 weeks in ancient Egypt. You're sick, exhausted, injured, and probably questioning every decision that led to this moment. Now let's talk about the society you're trapped in. Ancient Egypt was one of the most rigidly hierarchical civilizations in human history. Social mobility was nearly impossible. Your status was determined by birth, and it almost never changed. At the top, the pharaoh, considered a living god, his word was absolute law. Below him, the royal family, high priests, nobles, and high-ranking officials. These people controlled vast estates, commanded armies, and lived in luxury. Then came the scribes and skilled artisans, the middle class, if you can call it that. These were the literate few who could read and write hieroglyphs, a skill that took years to master and served as a gatekeeper to social advancement. Below them, farmers, laborers, and craftsmen. The vast majority of the population. These people worked the land, built the monuments, and produced everything the society needed to function. At the bottom, slaves and prisoners of war. These people had no rights whatsoever and could be worked to death without consequence. Where do you fit in this hierarchy? Nowhere. You don't exist in the system. You have no family connections, no patron to vouch for you, no land, no skills that this society values. You can't read hieroglyphs. You don't know the religious customs. You don't understand the legal system. In modern terms, you're an illegal alien with no documentation. Your only value is your physical labor, which makes you functionally equivalent to the lowest class of society. And here's the problem. Ancient Egypt was not a society that valued individual rights or personal freedom. Those are modern Western concepts that didn't exist in the ancient world. If you broke a law, even a minor one, the punishment was swift and brutal. Theft, your hand might be cut off. Serious crimes? Execution, often by impalement, drowning, or burning. The concept of proportional punishment didn't exist. Justice was harsh, public, and designed to terrify people into compliance. Legal proceedings were summary. If someone with higher social status accused you of a crime, you were essentially guilty unless you could prove otherwise. And how would you prove anything when you can't speak the language and have no social connections? Let's talk about beatings. Physical punishment was standard in ancient Egypt, not just for criminals, but for workers, servants, and anyone in a subordinate position. Tomb inscriptions casually mention workers being beaten for various infractions. Artistic depictions show overseers with sticks raised, striking laborers. This wasn't abuse in their eyes, this was management. If you failed to meet a work quota, you were beaten. If you showed up late, you were beaten. If you talked back to someone of higher status, you were beaten. Your body was not your own. It belonged to whatever authority controlled you, the state, the temple, or a private landowner. Now let's talk about something that might not occur to you immediately. You can't leave. Ancient Egypt was geographically isolated. To the north, the Mediterranean Sea. To the east and west, desert. To the south, Nubia, another ancient kingdom, and more desert beyond that. There's nowhere to go, no neighboring country where you can claim asylum, no international community to appeal to. You're trapped in a civilization with no concept of individual rights, no legal protections for people without status, and no escape route. Even if you tried to flee into the desert, you'd die within days from dehydration or exposure. The desert surrounding Egypt wasn't an empty wasteland. It was a killing field that Egyptian authorities didn't even need to patrol because nature did the job for them. The only way out was to integrate into society, which meant finding a patron, learning a skill, proving your value, and climbing the hierarchy. For a modern person who doesn't speak the language, impossible. You'd remain at the bottom of the social pyramid forever, doing back-breaking labor for subsistence rations, subject to arbitrary punishment, with no hope of improvement. Actually, it's worse than that, because at any moment, Egypt could go to war. And when that happened, able-bodied men were conscripted into the army. Military service was not voluntary, it was compulsory, and it was brutal. Ancient Egyptian warfare was up close and personal. Bronze swords, spears, axes, maces. Soldiers fought in tight formation, hacking and stabbing at each other until one side broke and ran. There were no rules of engagement, no Geneva Conventions. Prisoners were often executed, enslaved, or mutilated. If you survived a battle, you came back traumatized, probably injured, and definitely expected to return to your regular labor duties immediately. If you died, and many did, no one would remember your name. You'd be thrown in a mass grave with other conscripts, your body left to decompose in the desert. This is the social reality of ancient Egypt. You are expendable. You are a tool. Your suffering doesn't matter. Your death doesn't matter. You exist to serve the Pharaoh, the gods, and the state. That's it. Week 2 ends with this realization. Even if you survive the diseases, the predators, and the labor, you're trapped in a system designed to use you until you break. Week 3, the religious trap. It's week 3, you're still alive, somehow. You're sick, injured, malnourished, and broken, but alive. Now you face a different kind of trap, religion. Ancient Egypt was a theocracy. Religion wasn't just part of life, it was life. Every action, every decision, every aspect of society was governed by religious belief. The Pharaoh was a living god. The priests were intermediaries between humans and the divine. The temples controlled vast wealth and political power. And you, a person from the 21st century with completely different religious concepts, or no religion at all, are expected to participate in this system without question. Here's the problem. You don't understand the religion. Ancient Egyptian religion was polytheistic, with hundreds of gods and goddesses, each with specific domains, mythologies, and cult practices. Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Anubis, Thoth, Hathor, Sobek. These weren't abstract concepts. They were real, tangible presences that Egyptians believed actively intervened in daily life. Failing to show proper respect to the gods wasn't just socially unacceptable, it was dangerous. The gods could punish you with illness, crop failure, or death. Every morning, temple priests performed rituals to wake up the gods, bathe them, dress them, and offer them food. These weren't symbolic acts. Egyptians believed the statues literally housed divine spirits. As a member of society, you'd be expected to participate in religious festivals, make offerings, and follow countless taboos and restrictions. Don't eat certain foods on certain days. Don't speak certain words. Don't touch certain objects. Don't enter certain places. The rules were complex, culturally embedded, and never explained because everyone was supposed to know them from childhood. You don't. So you'd constantly violate taboos without realizing it. And when things went wrong, when you got sick, when crops failed, when someone died, Egyptians looked for religious explanations. Had someone offended the gods? Was there a curse? Was someone practicing magic against the community? Outsiders and foreigners were often blamed for supernatural problems. You, with your strange behavior and inability to follow proper religious protocols, would be an easy scapegoat. If the community decided you were cursed or that you'd brought divine disfavor, you could be ostracized, expelled, or killed. There was no rational discourse, no scientific explanation, no due process, just religious fear and collective action. Let's talk about death and the afterlife, because that's going to be very relevant soon. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with death. They believed that life on Earth was just a temporary phase, and that the afterlife was what really mattered. To reach the afterlife, you needed your body to be preserved, mummification. You needed to be buried with the right objects, Shabti figures, amulets, food offerings, and you needed to know the correct spells and prayers, the Book of the Dead. Rich Egyptians could afford elaborate tombs, professional embalmers, and full burial equipment. Poor Egyptians, you got a shallow grave in the sand, maybe wrapped in a reed mat if you were lucky. Without proper burial, your soul couldn't reach the afterlife. You'd wander forever as a restless spirit, a fate Egyptians considered worse than death. As a foreigner with no family, no social connections, and no resources, you weren't going to get a proper burial. When you died, and at this point it's when, not if, your body would be dumped in a common pit or left in the desert for scavengers. No afterlife, no eternal paradise, just oblivion. The psychological weight of this would crush you. Imagine knowing that you're going to die soon, probably in pain, probably alone, and that when you do, there won't even be a grave marker. You'll simply cease to exist. And all around you, Egyptians are living their lives with the comfortable certainty that death is just a transition, that they'll see their loved ones again, that the gods will judge them and welcome them to paradise. But not you. Never you. This existential horror is something modern people don't really face. We have systems, hospitals, social services, insurance, legal protections that buffer us from the reality of death. In ancient Egypt, death was immediate, personal, and constant. Children died, young adults died. Death was so common that Egyptian funerary practices became one of the most elaborate aspects of their culture. You'd watch people die around you, from disease, from accidents, from violence, and know that you're next. Week 3 ends with the spiritual realization that you are truly alone in a world that doesn't want you, doesn't understand you, and won't remember you. Day 25. The diseases strike. It's day 25. You've made it farther than most would, but your body is shutting down. Remember those parasites you picked up in week 1? They've now migrated through your system. The schistosomiasis worms have matured and are laying eggs in your bladder and intestines. Every time you urinate, there's blood. Every time you defecate, there's blood. Your liver is swollen. Your abdomen is distended. You're developing ascites, fluid accumulation in your belly that makes you look pregnant even as you're starving to death. The malaria hasn't killed you, but it's become chronic. Every few weeks, you experience fever spikes so intense that you shake uncontrollably, even in the desert heat. Your spleen is enlarged, pressing against your other organs. The intestinal worms are stealing nutrients from what little food you eat. You're consuming 2,000 calories a day and still losing weight because the parasites are eating it before you can absorb it. Your teeth are broken stubs. The sand in the bread has ground them down to the nerve. Every meal is agony. Abscesses have formed in your gums. The infection is spreading to your jaw. The cuts and scrapes on your hands and feet from weeks of labor have become infected. Some have turned into tropical ulcers, open sores that won't heal. The infection is starting to spread up your limbs. You're anemic from blood loss, parasitic infection, and malnutrition. Your skin is pale. You're constantly dizzy. Your heart races even when you're sitting still because your blood can't carry enough oxygen. Your immune system, already compromised by malnutrition and parasites, finally gives up. Pneumonia sets in. It starts as a cough. Within days, you're coughing up blood-tinged sputum. Breathing becomes difficult. Your chest feels like it's being crushed. Fever spikes to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. You're delirious, hallucinating, unable to distinguish reality from fever dreams. Your labor gang doesn't help you. They can't. They have their own problems, their own illnesses. In ancient Egypt, you either worked or you died. There was no sick leave. You're left on your sleeping mat in whatever structure you've been assigned, probably a communal barracks, burning with fever, barely conscious. This is how most ancient people died. Not dramatically in battle or in some heroic sacrifice. They died slowly, miserably, from infections and diseases that we can cure today with a simple course of antibiotics. But there are no antibiotics. There is no medical intervention. There isn't even palliative care. You die alone, in pain, far from home, in a time and place where your death means nothing to anyone. Your body is dragged outside and left for the desert scavengers. Within days, the jackals and vultures have reduced you to scattered bones. Within weeks, even those bones are buried by sand. You existed for 25 days in ancient Egypt. Then you stopped existing. No one mourns you. No one remembers you. History doesn't record your name because you never had a name in this society. You were just another failed attempt at survival in one of the harshest civilizations in human history. Why you failed, the brutal reality. So let's be brutally honest about why you wouldn't survive in ancient Egypt. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack intelligence or courage or determination. It's because you're a product of modern civilization, and that civilization has made you incompatible with ancient life. Modern humans are soft in ways we don't even realize. Your immune system has been trained to fight off common colds and seasonal flu, not waterborne parasites and endemic malaria. Your body is adapted to climate-controlled environments, not 120 degrees Fahrenheit desert heat or 40 degrees Fahrenheit desert nights. Your digestive system is used to processed, refrigerated sanitary food, not contaminated water and sand-filled bread. Your pain tolerance is calibrated for paper cuts and stubbed toes, not untreated infections and broken bones. You've never experienced true starvation, the kind where your body begins consuming its own muscle tissue to survive. You've never worked 16 hours a day, doing hard manual labor with inadequate nutrition and no days off. You've never lived in a society where physical beatings are standard workplace practice. You've probably never seen someone die violently in front of you, let alone experience the psychological trauma of seeing death constantly. These aren't criticisms, they're observations. Modern life has eliminated most of the selection pressures that shaped ancient humans. We don't need to be physically tough anymore because we've built systems that protect us from environmental hazards. But remove those systems, drop a modern person into the ancient world without preparation, and the mismatch is lethal. Ancient Egyptians could survive in their environment because they were born into it. They developed immunities to local diseases during childhood. Those who didn't died young. They were acclimated to the heat. They knew which foods were safe, which water sources were less contaminated, which animals to avoid. They understood the social rules, the religious requirements, the legal system. They had family networks and community support. You have none of that. You're a time traveler without a survival manual, dropped into a hostile environment with no preparation, no local knowledge, and no support system. The diseases would get you. The work would break you. The environment would kill you. The social system would crush you. Ancient Egypt wasn't a civilization you could just show up to and blend in. It was a complex, highly stratified society that had evolved over thousands of years to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And it was brutal, far more brutal than popular culture admits. Hollywood shows you the pyramids, the gold, the temples, the pharaohs. They don't show you the child mortality, the parasitic infections, the dental abscesses, the constant labor, the arbitrary violence. They don't show you the reality that for 99% of the population, life in ancient Egypt was a grinding struggle against disease, hunger, exhaustion, and early death. Modern people tend to romanticize ancient civilizations. We imagine ourselves as pharaohs or high priests, not as the anonymous laborers who died building monuments they'd never be allowed to enter. But that's what you'd be. Not special, not important. Just another body doing labor until that body gave out. The truth is, we're incredibly lucky to live in the modern world. We have antibiotics that can cure infections that would have been death sentences in the ancient world. We have clean water, refrigeration, and food safety standards that prevent the parasitic infections that plagued ancient populations. We have legal systems that, imperfectly but genuinely, protect individual rights. We have social safety nets, however inadequate, that prevent people from literally starving to death. We have concepts of human rights, personal freedom, and dignity that didn't exist in the ancient world. These aren't small things. They're the difference between 30-year life expectancies and 80-year life expectancies. Ancient Egypt was one of the most successful civilizations in human history. It lasted over 3,000 years. It created monumental architecture that still stands today. It developed writing, mathematics, medicine, and art. But it was also a civilization built on the broken bodies of countless laborers, sustained by rigid hierarchy and defined by the constant presence of death. You wouldn't survive there, not because you're inadequate, but because survival required being born into that world, shaped by it from birth, and willing to accept a life of hardship that modern people can barely imagine. The pyramids are beautiful. The hieroglyphs are fascinating. The mythology is compelling. But the reality of daily life in ancient Egypt? Brutal, painful, short, and almost certainly fatal for any modern person foolish enough to try it. The uncomfortable truth. There's a reason ancient history is studied from books and not experienced firsthand. Ancient Egypt wasn't a romantic adventure. It was a survival challenge that most ancient Egyptians themselves failed, dying young from diseases, accidents, or violence. The civilization we admire today, the monuments, the art, the achievements, was built on a foundation of immense human suffering. Thousands of laborers died building the pyramids. Countless farmers died from parasitic infections contracted working the Nile irrigation systems. Innumerable children died before seeing their 5th birthday. This wasn't anyone's fault. This was simply the reality of life before modern medicine, sanitation, and technology. But it's worth remembering. The next time you see a documentary about ancient Egypt that focuses on pharaohs and treasure, remember the anonymous millions who lived and died in that civilization without ever having their names recorded. The next time you drink clean tap water, remember that ancient Egyptians had to choose between dehydration and parasitic infection. The next time you take antibiotics for an infection, remember that ancient Egyptians watched loved ones die from infected cuts. We live in an unprecedented era of human history. Life has never been longer, healthier, or safer than it is right now in the developed world. Ancient Egypt was magnificent, but you wouldn't survive there. Nobody would. And that's okay, because we don't have to. We built a better world.